Coming up, Steph Curry shuts down the Rockets and the Celtics blow out the Heat. This is Locked On Now, NBA.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
You're listening to Locked On Now, NBA, local experts on the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Kim Becker, and thanks so much for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. Our Locked On NBA hosts are here to help break down everything from Monday in basketball. The Grizzlies and Sixers needed extra time to decide their game in Philly in last night's biggest game.
The biggest game.
The Philadelphia 76ers won without Joel Embiid last night, just barely getting by the Grizzlies in overtime. Our Locked On Sixers and Locked On Grizzlies hosts break down the best finish of the night in the NBA.
This is Kai Carlin of Locked On 76ers, still here at the Wells Fargo Center after the 76ers knocked off the Memphis Grizzlies 122-119 in overtime, despite not having superstar big man Joel Embiid. Tyrese Maxey had a huge game with 33 points and 8 assists. Tobias Harris added 31. Andre Drummond added 16 points, 23 rebounds, 5 assists, and he also had 3 blocks. And they really needed big contributions from those three to overcome Memphis Grizzlies star Ja Morant, who scored 37 points of his own, and he also got 30-plus out of Desmond Bane as well. Terrific win for the Sixers as they now improved to 4-0 in this 5-game homestand, and now they're going to look to finish off a perfect 5-0 homestand when they host the Washington Wizards on Wednesday, where they hope to have Joel Embiid return. I'm Kai Carlin, and this is it from Wells Fargo Center.
The Indiana Pacers hosted the Los Angeles Clippers and won, and our Locked On Pacers didn't have many complaints after a complete game that led to an Indiana victory.
Tony East, host of Locked On Pacers, here in Bankers Life Fieldhouse, where the Pacers just beat the Clippers for their first win of their 3-game homestand coming up. Final score is 122-116. Good win for the Pacers. They haven't had a nice wire-to-wire solid performance like this in a long time, and with so many guys out, no Domantas Sabonis, no Miles Turner, no Malcolm Brogdon, no TJ Warren, no TJ McConnell, no O'Shea Brissett. The list goes on and on. The Pacers were able to get a nice win led by a lot of key reserves, led by some rookies. Isaiah Jackson, the 22nd pick in the draft, best game of his young career, 26 points, 10 rebounds. He was awesome on defense as well, no fouls. He was excellent. Pacers needed this win. They got it. The reserve stepped up. This is exactly what a young building team needs, and they'll continue to grow on it. We'll talk about it all on tomorrow's Locked On Pacers podcast.
The Boston Celtics have now won 4 of their last 5 games, and 3 of those wins coming by at least 29 points. Boston's latest blowout was over the Heat last night in Boston, and our Locked On Celtics host tells you who filled up the stat sheet this time around.
Hey there, John Corrales here from the Locked On Celtics podcast at the TD Garden after the Boston Celtics beat the Miami Heat by 31-22 behind 49 combined points. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Also a great game from Marcus Smart. The Celtics came out moving the ball well. They attacked the zone, which has been a real weak spot for them, something that really cost them in Atlanta, something that hurt them in New Orleans and made that game closer than it should have been for a while. But in this game, they came out and executed. This is really what execution is supposed to look like from the Boston Celtics, who are finally whole and finally getting a little bit of consistency. So, but what happened in this game here, the Celtics kind of fell apart in the second quarter, where the Miami Heat put an 18-5 run together. Ime Udoka called a timeout with the score tied at 32. The Celtics came out and put together a 9-0 run to take a lead that they would never relinquish. Then in the third quarter, they really just pulled away. Everything was clicking for the Celtics there. Defense was good, offense was good. They got a bunch of assists. They were moving the ball well. They were pushing the pace. Everything you could ask for. The Miami Heat, certainly a shorthanded team, and that helped. No Jimmy Butler, no Kyle Lowry. So not the Miami Heat that is the first place team in the East, but any Celtics win, and a win like this where the execution was as good as it was, is very important and very welcome. I'll be talking about it in the Locked On Celtics podcast, so make sure you're listening, subscribed, and watch the show on YouTube.
Coming up, Steph Curry scored 40 to close the door on the Rockets. This is Locked On Now NBA. While there might be less football being played, but BetOnline.net has way more odds and info for this playoff season. From scores, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline is the #1 spot for all things NFL betting in 2022. And it's not just football, you guys. BetOnline.net's basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC odds coverage is the best in the business. From sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline is your #1 online wagering destination. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports and play your favorite games. BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome back to Locked On Now. I'm your host, Kim Becker, and thanks for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. Let's continue our recap of the night in basketball with last night's best performance.
The best performance.
Hold up.
As far too many teams have learned in the NBA over the years, everyone on your team can have a really good night, and Steph Curry still might beat you on his own. He took over for the Warriors last night in Houston, and Locked On Rockets tells you more about the big takeover.
Too much Steph Curry down the stretch late in this one for the Houston Rockets. What's up? Jackson Gatlin here from over at Locked On Rockets. Even though the Rockets fall to the Warriors in this one, some really encouraging storylines for the Houston Rockets. Kevin Porter Jr. continues to look every bit the part of the point guard of the future for this Rockets team. He recorded 8 assists by halftime and just 1 turnover, the most assists he's recorded in a given half. Things are looking like they're slowing down for him. He's looking much more comfortable orchestrating this Rockets offense, and Christian Wood put up a dominant double-double in this game, a potential audition for the Golden State Warriors should the Houston Rockets decide to strike a deal with the Warriors at the NBA trade deadline to help them bolster their front court in the absence of one Draymond Green moving forward as they vie for another title down the line in this season. And lastly, Steph Curry, just too much to handle down the stretch of this game for the Houston Rockets. Dropped 21 points in the fourth quarter. The only other time he's dropped more points in the fourth quarter, Game 6 in the Western Conference semifinals, also against the Houston Rockets, where he dropped 23 points. Just too much Steph Curry in this one, unfortunately, but some promising signs for the Houston Rockets. We're going to break down everything from this game and more over at Locked On Rockets.
The Toronto Raptors picked up another big win last night, this time beating the Hawks in Atlanta. As Toronto moves back over 500 again, our Locked On Raptors says Toronto's starting 5 has taken it to another level in the recent surge.
The Raptors starters do it again. Sean Woodley here from Locked On Raptors to break down the Toronto Raptors 106-100 win over the Atlanta Hawks in Atlanta on Monday night to move the Raptors to 25-23 on the season. And the big takeaway from this one is that the Raptors starting 5 is coalescing into one of the better 5-man units in the NBA. Their overall numbers aren't that impressive just yet. There's some noisy samples from earlier on in the season where guys were getting back and acclimatized, but with this win over the Hawks, where the Raptors starters were just incredible in the second half, really got the Raptors back on track with this in this one after being down 9 at the half with some incredible defense, turning it into offense. Pascal Siakam continues to play all NBA level basketball. He had 25 points in this one. Gary Trent Jr., this guy, 4 straight games of 30 or more points. OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, incredible defense. Fred VanVleet doing the all-star thing or all-star worthy thing he's done all season long. And this 5-man group, which has not played together a whole lot this year, is finally getting some run together, some time to play and gel and learn one another. And you're seeing them pick up wins. Of course, this is coming off the heels of Saturday's game against the Miami Heat, where that same 5-man crew all played at least 54 minutes in a triple overtime win over the East leading Heat. This is a really good team that just needs some help. And I think what we've seen in the last couple of days here should probably force the Raptors' hand ahead of the deadline to give this 5-man crew the support it deserves. I'll have more from this game broken down on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Raptors, so be sure to tune in.
The Raptors' win ended a 7-game win streak for the Hawks, but Atlanta was playing without Trae Young in the matchup. With more on why that was and how Atlanta let Toronto win it, our Locked On Hawks has more.
Hello friends, my name is Brad Rowland, and the Atlanta Hawks no longer have the longest winning streak in the Eastern Conference as they go down at the hands of the Toronto Raptors on Monday evening at State Farm Arena. Having won 7 in a row, they had a chance to win 8 in a row in this game and reach 500 in the same moment, but the Hawks could not quite get over the hump in the second half. A third quarter to forget for Atlanta, got them behind the 8 ball, and the fourth quarter was a scrap. To be sure, the Hawks had chances, and they were competitive and valiant down the stretch, but not quite enough to get over the hump. beyond the result of the game and the streak coming to an end, Trae Young missed this game. That's kind of a headliner, obviously, for Atlanta as their best player. He had a shoulder issue, kept him out of the lineup on this night, tried to warm up, didn't have it in him to play in this game, and we'll keep an eye on that for sure moving forward. But the Hawks did perform valiantly defensively in this game, offensively shaky to be sure, as you might expect without Trae Young. We'll get into all of that on the Locked On Hawks podcast. But from here, the Hawks have 2 days off before returning to the court against the Phoenix Suns, the red-hot Phoenix Suns, on Thursday. That'll be an interesting national TV showdown between the Hawks and the Suns. But between now and then, we'll have all the coverage that you could possibly want on the Locked On Hawks podcast.
The New York Knicks took a chance to play the Kings at home and used it to snap out of a big slump with a big win. After the blowout in the Garden, our Locked On Knicks is here with the recap.
How do you break out of a 3-game losing streak and losing 6 of your last 7? Well, a really good way is to face a team in the Sacramento Kings that have lost 11 of their last 13 and are on the road facing you in Madison Square Garden. The Knicks did just that. They had the Sacramento Kings at home, totally destroyed them, wire-to-wire victory here. It was never really close, and the Knicks had their way. You know, Evan Fournier opens the game with 16 points on 6 of 6 shooting. Fantastic scoring display from him. Julius Randle puts out 17 points, 9 boards, 4 assists on 50% shooting. RJ Barrett had some struggles, but still managed to put together some highlight plays in the second half. And then the bench, Obi Toppin, 14 points, 6 of 8 shooting. Quentin Grimes, 14 points, 5 of 9 shooting. Just fantastic defense from him. 3 steals generated in this game. Alec Burks, a quiet 21 points to lead the team off the bench on 6 of 9 shooting, 5 boards, 4 assists. The vibes were fantastic in this game. The crowd even, amidst all their cheering, got to will a Cam Reddish appearance into happening by chanting his name in the fourth quarter. Tibbs maybe acquiesced, maybe had it planned to begin with, but Cam Reddish even saw a few minutes in this game, so things went really well. And for the Knicks, it mostly comes down to you got to be able to translate this into something that's more sustainable. These feel good nights are great, and there's been a number of them this season, but they've been the exception, not the rule. By and large, the Knicks have not been giving consistent effort every night, and they've had a hard time stringing performances like this together. So we'll see how they do in their next game on Wednesday. But for at least one night, the Garden got to have a lot of fun. Knicks fans got to have a lot of fun, and it was a good time all around. So we'll have more about it all on Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
The Cleveland Cavaliers and the New Orleans Pelicans played a low-scoring matchup on Monday, with both teams missing players they would normally rely on. Cleveland came out on top, and Locked On Cavs tells you how.
Hey, Chris Manning here from the Locked On Cavs podcast. After the Cavs just beat the New Orleans Pelicans 93-90 on Monday night in Cleveland, here's why this game matters. The Cavs, after losing last night in Detroit in kind of an ugly loss, were without Darius Garland this one due to some lower back soreness. The Cavs offense looked like it was missing its all-star caliber point guard. Didn't start a point guard for that matter in the first half, with Brandon Goodwin then coming in the second half and scoring a career-high 21 points. But the Cavs went out. They came back from 9 down in the fourth. They won, and they just kind of mucked their way through a game that they needed to win, frankly, as the East gets more competitive, and they did it without Garland. The offense wasn't pretty, it wasn't good, but a win is a win when you're jostling for seeding in the Eastern Conference right now. The Cavs have to take this. They have to feel satisfied they came back from 9 down and got some good minutes from Goodwin, who they got on originally a hardship deal and has kind of become a little gem for them this season while they battle injuries at the guard spot. So, Cavs win, no Darius Garland, but a win's a win. For more, check out Locked On Cavs wherever you get your podcasts.
The New Orleans Pelicans have an excuse for their recent losing streak, with key players out of the lineup, including star scorer Brandon Ingram. But as the losing streak hits 4, our Locked On Pelicans host explains why New Orleans has struggled so much while shorthanded.
Still without Brandon Ingram, any game that's close is a moral victory for the Pelicans, but the L still counts in the standings. I'm Jake Madison, host of Locked On Pelicans and Locked On NBA. The Pelicans fall 93-90 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. No Brandon Ingram, no Zion Williamson, and yet the Pelicans still compete and come close to grabbing victory. Big man Jackson Hayes gets his first start of the season at power forward instead of his normal center position and completely frustrated the Cavs for about 90% of the night. Hayes, who has been in and out of the rotation, finished with 19 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 blocks. But more importantly than his numbers, he gave star rookie Evan Mobley fits all evening. He kept him out of position defensively, which allowed teammate Jonas Valanciunas plenty of space to work, and he contested everything the maybe rookie of the year shot as Mobley went 1 of 7 on the night. But the Cavs won, and it's a frustrating loss for New Orleans because you feel with Brandon Ingram or Zion Williamson or even remotely competent three-point shooting, the Pelicans could have won this game. But you play the hand that you're dealt, and right now that isn't good enough to get a win as the Pelicans are on a 4-game losing streak. So what will the Pelicans do at the trade deadline to try and fix this? Could they make a move for CJ McCollum? I've got it all over at the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
That's all for today's Locked On Now NBA. Thank you to our NBA hosts for keeping us up to date on everything that happened in basketball yesterday. And thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. Now that you're done here with us, head on over to Locked On NBA or your team's local Locked On podcast. I'm Kim Becker, and this has been Locked On Now, Locked On your team every day.